Thank you. Okay, so I want to begin with this image. This is the Pepsi bioreactive concert, which some of you might think looks kind of cool, and some of you might think looks like the seventh circle of hell. This is how it works. Concert goers at this concert wear a digital bracelet that converts physiological data, physiological expressions rather, into biometric data. Noise, movement, sweat, heat, and so on. And that data is then fed back into the media infrastructure of the venue. Lights, music, rewards like free drinks, visualizations on the big screen, smoke effects, and so on, are all triggered by the collective biometrics of the audience. I start with this strange example because the bioreactive concert is, to me, a small microcosm for a media system that's really attempting to become bioreactive in general. I'm interested in how the feedback loop between our lived experience and participatory culture and the data processing power of media is becoming tuned. And the provocation that I'm interested in making today is that the media platforms that now dominate our culture, and I'm thinking here of the Facebooks, Googles, and Instagrams, are less interested in how media work as technologies for representing reality than they are in how media work as technologies for augmenting reality. And by this I mean, by representing reality, I mean it in the way that many of us are familiar with in the humanities, that that social process through which humans narrate the world they live in. But by augmenting reality, I mean the way this social process of representation morphs into a kind of multifaceted process of using data to predict and to augment our moment-to-moment experience. And I think, funnily enough, Father Bob offers a kind of useful passing of the difference between representation and augmentation. Here's a tweet of his where he's responding to the debate last year about the removal of Jim Crow era statues in the US, and the way that spilt over into an Australian discussion about the removal of colonial statues, and particularly statues of Captain Cook. And he had this to say: could we not have virtual statues which the algorithm could change as directed by public opinion? And here I think the wily old priest captures something of the spirit of platform media, in that platforms look at a conflict about what historical statues mean and see not the need to construct a kind of shared public conversation. What they see is the socio-technical problem of how to show every individual the statue that they would like to see at the same time. And this, I would argue, helps to explain why media platforms are so bad at, and also in a sense so disinterested in, solving problems like fake news and filter bubbles and algorithmically driven conspiracy and racist and sexist classifications and so on. These are all problems of representation that generate representational harms. Whereas platforms follow the much longer history of media as technologies of reconnaissance, logistics, and data collection. They follow in a history of marketing, retail, and the military more than broadcast and mass media. As John Durham Peters has put it, the symbolic understanding of media as audiovisual entertainment machines that we developed in the 20th century might turn out to be something of a historical exception. Digital media return us to the norm of media as data processing devices. And I think tech companies kind of promote this spirit. They imagine themselves developing a media culture where things and places and bodies and experiences become machine readable. And I want to explore a little bit what role we play as everyday participants in this social process of tuning machine learning algorithms. For the past decade, I've been particularly interested in social media's participatory promotional culture. And to me, social media platforms are interesting because they are the site of one of the most expansive commercializations of public culture and intimate experience in our history. And they engineer a new kind of interplay between our creative capacities and the computational power of digital technologies. One site where where I've spent a lot of time observing this kind of intersection between cultural life and digital media is music festivals, particularly large corporate music festivals like Splendour in the Grass. And what you can see is a number of images from Splendour in the Grass posted to the social media platform Instagram. At these kind of music festivals, an array of actors, audience members, influencers, promoters, and artists create and share hundreds of thousands of images and videos during the festival, creating a kind of moment-to-moment narrative, if you like, of the festival. what I'm interested in, or what I became interested in over time, is not just the participatory culture here of turning life into images and video, but also how this was also doubling as the process of constructing a database, of translating lived experience into a database. And together with a colleague in computer science, we've created a prototype neural network to critically simulate the machine learning capacities of platforms like Instagram. In the example on screen is some early work we've done training the network on images from Splendor in the Grass. And what we've realized fairly quickly is that the network can identify all sorts of things in the festival, in the images people produce. People, objects, brand logos, art objects, and so on. So here's a run of photos where it's identified a particular piece of art, and here's where it's identified a particular brand logo, and so on. What I think we see here is a kind of emerging feedback loop. We document our experience, a machine learns to classify it, and this enables platforms to then operate on it. To give a kind of example from the festival, I drink a Smirnoff vodka in the Smirnoff bar, I post an image of that, a machine sees the brand in the image, and then the brand weaves its way into my feed of images that I'm interacting with in real time. So I want to join together a few things happening in our media culture here. Firstly, translating our cultural experience into images that double as data. Secondly, training neural networks that can classify those images. And then thirdly, developing digital technologies that can kind of simulate and fabricate our visual culture. And that's where I want to kind of move to this question of fabrication or simulation. This is little Michaela, an Instagram influencer with 1.5 million followers. And in this image, she's launching a campaign for the global fashion brand Prada. These kind of stickers and GIFs on the image can be picked up and taken by her followers and used in their own images in a very kind of mimetic, participatory kind of branding. The thing about little Michaela, if you can't tell already, of course, is that she's not actually a human. She's a CGI animated influencer produced by a team of digital artists and is therefore very malleable. And I'm interested in how she winks at a particular kind of future. And I want to kind of join that up by thinking about this move from machines that can classify our cultural objects to machines that can produce or simulate cultural texts like images. On screen here is an example of a developing wave of adversarial neural networks. That is, two machine learning systems, one training against the other. In this example, the first network, by being shown millions of examples, has learned to classify human handwriting. And then it's trained a second network to write like a human. That's the second network's outputs at the bottom there. Similar experiments are underway with voice, images, and video. And so I think we can think about things like little Michaela in relation to these kinds of neural networks. In that little Michaela suggests a future where media platforms and little Michaela winks at the future that media platforms and advertisers envision. One in which images begin to mix together reality and simulation to place brands within semi-fabricated scenes. So at music festivals like Splendor in the Grass, brands currently send out real-life, fleshy influencers to the festival to turn it into images. But in the future, they may also sell the rights to digital data generated at the festival over several years so that brands can simulate flows of images. Catherine and Hales observed in How We Become Post-Human that the limiting factor in digital culture is not going to be the data processing power of computers, but rather the scarce commodity, as it always has been in our media cultures, will be human attention. A crucial form that our participation in culture today takes is as coders of databases. We're a crucial part of the tuning machine, the historical process of training algorithms to sense, process, and optimize our living attention, of making our humanness, affect, and feeling machine readable. Digital platforms' investments in data-driven classification and simulation is characterized by what Mark Andrejevic calls the tech ideology of framelessness, the fantasy that by scooping up all of the data, we can create a mirror world, a kind of perfect copy of reality that we can operate on. What the humanities knows, though, is that this project is a flawed one. The human experience of reality is necessarily partial. We humans insist on a world small enough to know, to narrate, to make meaning from, and to imagine as different from what it is now. As algorithmic decision-making is inserted into an expanding array of moments in human culture, As the living of everyday life doubles as the training of computational systems, we're seeing a kind of rising tide of social and political concern. Around the tech industry is ballooning a FATE industry. FATE here stands for fairness, accountability, transparency, and ethics. And the tech industry is employing people from across the social, behavioural, and political sciences to help them build better algorithms. The humanities, I would argue, matter because they're central to avoiding the fatalism of fate. Humanities can help contend with the risk that fate makes an algorithmic future inevitable and understandable only as a series of technocratic decisions about how to administer life in network capitalism. The humanities of the future will push us beyond procedural questions to questions about how media can and cannot operate on human experience and feeling, and what role media will play in the possibility of a shared culture. What the humanities knows is that coding databases and training algorithms, like everything else humans try to do together in the world, is deeply entangled with culture, with our structures of feeling and systems of dominance. Thank you.